Hello, hello. Welcome in. Whether you're coming in live today or if you're watching at a later date, my name's Ra, and I will be guiding us through some healing yoga practice today. This will be a little bit of a building on last week's, but no problem if you haven't watched last week's video. This should be accessible to you and healing to your nervous system just the same. Last week we focused in on this idea of moving from collapse and finding integrity through length, because a lot of times when we experience repeated trauma or repeated experiences of stress in our life, we can have this response of collapsing in our nervous system. And from that place of lengthening that we worked on last week, we're going to attempt to start to find some nuance in what we're addressing. So another way that we can collapse or detach from our own internal knowing as a stress response is through a response called fawn, which essentially means an abandoning of self to move towards something that someone else wants or someone else needs or demands of us. And it can be an adaptive response when we're in danger, when we're in a space that is not safe for us. It's only safe for us to attend to the other in the situation. So today is an attempt to start to re-regulate around that fawn response, to re-regulate around taking up space and feeling our edges, feeling our boundaries, and moving towards what feels good and away from what does not. From this place, we'll start to explore a couple different movements. So wanting to name these movements so that you can take them along in your toolkit as we move through today's practice to make any adjustments that you might need, or as you move towards activating these movement tools in your day-to-day life. So the actions that we're going to be thinking about are continuing with that lengthening, that grounding down and growing tall through the spine. And to add on to that, we're going to start to explore some widening. So that might just be this sense of wideness in our own system, in our own bodies. What does it feel like to take up space? Or it could be even this physical widening, reaching out to the edges of our space and really feeling into our energetic edges. So the lengthening, the widening, in terms of establishing boundaries, sensing into boundaries, the other movement that we're going to be exploring through today's practice is the action of push. So we may at some points be pushing against air, pushing against our own resistance. And at other times, you may be pushing against something solid, like the ground. So these are some movement cues to maybe notice how your nervous system is responding to and to be aware of throughout our practice today. If you'd like to have some props, I'm going to suggest some padding for the knees, so a blanket or just a nice thick yoga mat that you can fold over. Another option that I will be using, but may not be necessary for your body, are blocks to lift the ground up to meet you. From there, you can go ahead and pause if you need to gather those things. If you're ready to go, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to bring this blanket underneath my sits bones to lift my hips up slightly. And we'll come into a comfortable seat, whatever that means for you in today's practice. So that could look like a cross-legged seat. It could look like becoming seated on the shins. My words are so here today. It could be something completely your own. And from this place, I want to encourage you to allow your eyes to soften onto something that feels safe. Maybe that's a cue in the room. Maybe that's the floor. Maybe that's the back of your eyelids. Maybe it feels safe to allow the eyes to completely shut. And just let your body hold itself the way it naturally is drawn to hold itself. So that might be an uneven shape, a slouched shape, a leaning forward or a leaning back shape. Just let it fall where it wants to fall. And then as you're ready, start to bring attention to your breath. Not doing anything to change or shift it here in this moment, but just noticing where it's at. And it's really our first step in knowing what we need or establishing our boundaries, is where are we at in this current moment? And that is the inquiry that we're bringing to our breath. Where is our breath at? Noticing the inhale and the exhale. And then once you feel comfortable with that starting point of the body and the breath, we'll start to invite in some slight change through the breath, thinking about breathing in through the nose, filling into the chest, the ribs, the belly, allowing that to shift the torso, shift the trunk of your body. And then as you exhale, a release, a softening, settling into this slightly shifted shape. So with every inhale, we're thinking about that breath from the inside, pressing against the chest, the rib cage, the belly, to shift the posture. And then as you exhale, letting yourself settle into that new shifted shape. We'll continue here with a couple of rounds of breath until you maybe notice that the shape isn't shifting so much anymore and you're landing in this buoyant, lengthened space. You can kind of sense that central line of energy in the spine, from the hips all the way to the head. Or maybe that's just an image that you're holding, not a state that you necessarily have to reach today. We'll take a couple more rounds of breath here. Maybe setting an intention for your practice, whether that's to explore length or width or push. Or maybe you attach more solidly to the themes of responding to fawn or establishing boundaries. With that next inhale that you take, I want you to imagine breathing in whatever that intention is into your system, into your body. And then an audible exhale out, let that settle in as we jump into our practice. On that next breath, I invite you to reach your arms out in front of you as if you're pressing your hands forward. Notice where your limit is here. And then as you exhale, we're going to sweep the arms out to the side and let them fall towards the sides of the body. Inhale to bring the hands through center, pressing them forward. Exhale to bring them out towards the sides and then gently fall towards the earth. We'll do that a few more times, feeling our edges. Inhale to press slightly forward, feel that front edge. And as you exhale, let that come out to the side and fall back down. Two more here. Inhale to come forward. Exhale to find width. And to gently let go of that width. One more time here. Inhale. Exhale. And let that come back down. We'll start to come out of that seat here, shifting onto all fours. You can shift any props that you've taken out of the way. We're going to bring the hands towards the mat, knees underneath the hips. And from here, we're just going to engage in some contact with the hands making contact to the ground, knees or shins making contact to the ground, and noticing what your natural state here is as you make contact. Maybe there's a real tenseness or a clenching. Maybe there's a softness and a drooping. Maybe there's an active push almost immediately. Just notice what your initial state wants to be. Apparently mine is a little bit of a sway. But we always start from noticing where our starting point is at. Sometimes I think we rush into the doing of setting a boundary, of knowing our edges, of doing a practice before we really settle into where am I actually starting from? Where am I pushing off from? Once you start to feel settled in this shape, we're going to actively think about pressing the hands into the earth, pressing the knees or the shins into the earth, taking a big breath in to inflate through the back of the body. Find that width between the shoulder blades. And then as you exhale, maintaining some press into the hands, some press into the knees, we're going to start to drop the belly, spread through the front of the collarbones as you lift your gaze. A little cat-cow action here. Inhale to inflate through the back of the body, maintaining that gentle press into the palms. The chin tucks under. We find width through the shoulder blades, width through the back space. And then as you exhale, still pressing into the earth, let the belly drop. Begin to lift the chest, spread through the collarbones. That gaze can come slightly forward, or you can start to look up, depending on how it feels on the neck. Follow your own bodily cues. We'll go through that a couple more times. Inhale to find that rounded back. Exhale to find that cow shape, tilting the hips up, finding width through the collarbones. Head reaches towards the ceiling. Last round here. From here, we're going to take a quick little pause, bringing the toes to touch the knees while I start to settle the hips back in space. Think about the space between each side of the hips becoming wider. Then we're going to stack palm on top of palm and begin to rest the head down onto the hands. The elbows reach wide here as the chest and head sink into the mat and the hands respectively. A moment of introspection to notice how that push, that sense of width is landing just as we start our practice. Know that you can come back to this shape or any other safe shape in your body when you need to rest, when you need to reconnect to your awareness or to your grounding. There are no musts or have-tos in this practice, only a following of your intuition, a following of what you need. One more big breath in, and a big breath out. We'll start to peek the head off the hands, walking the hands forward in space here. We're going to keep the left hand grounded and start to walk the right hand out towards the side, inviting some width between the hands, a little side bend here. You might keep the hands as they are. You might let that left hand start to walk over towards the right, finding length. And as you're ready, we'll walk that back through center. Hands reach towards the top of the mat, keeping the right hand where it's at. This time we're going to walk the left hand any amount wider over towards the left. Letting the rest of the body start to follow, finding this little side blend with wide arms. And then as it feels comfy, you can start to invite that right hand over towards the left as well. Noticing that length sneak into the right side body. One more big breath in. And on that exhale, we'll come back through center, starting to walk the hands towards the body so that your press of the hands into the mat can lift the chest, lift the head. We'll take a big breath in, come on to shins, lift the hips over the knees, reach the arms up and overhead. Tugging the tailbone ever so slightly, we'll exhale, bring the arms out towards the sides and eventually towards that low back space. Giving yourself just this little hint of camel pose here. So we're not moving into a real back bend here, but we're focused on creating that width through the front of the body, length from crown of the head all the way to the knees. So take a couple breaths here. Noticing what it is to integrate those two sensations. And then inhale, we're going to reach the arms out towards the sides. And then exhale, keeping the hips where they're at, we're going to twist through the trunk towards the left. So not leading with the arms, leading with the core of the body, finding your twist towards the left. It may not be very much. That's okay. Finding your particular edge. On an inhale, we'll come back through center. And on an exhale, we'll twist towards the other side. Finding that spot where maybe you're like, ooh, that's where I start to constrict. That's where I start to tense up. Inhale through center. We'll take that one more time to each side. Exhale into a twist. Inhale through center. Exhale to twist. This time as you inhale, come back through center. Reach the hands up and overhead. Imagine that you're touching the edges of your energetic bubble, your energetic boundary. As you wiggle your fingers, let them come down towards the sides. Let your bum meet your heels. And we'll just notice how that feels. In some aspects of our practice, we may try to expand our boundaries beyond where they actually are. And that can really show up as a constriction or tension showing up in the body. So an invitation as we move through some of our next shapes to notice if an uninvited tension shows up, and when and if that happens, notice what moving away from that edge brings into the nervous system. Moving towards that more authentic boundary, that more realistic edge, instead of pushing ourselves to go beyond for our own expectations or for the expectations of others, and really honoring where our own particular edges lie. We'll take one big breath in through the nose. Audible sigh out if it feels safe and comfortable. And then we'll start to shift back forward into that all fours, bringing hands underneath shoulders, knees underneath hips. From there, start to walk the hands one handprint forward. So the heel of the hand comes to where the tips of the fingers were at. Start to curl the toes under behind you. Feel this press of the hands into the mat, press of the toes into the mat, and allow that push to lift your hips up and back or downward facing dog. You can pedal it out here. You can make any adjustments that feel good. Sometimes I like to bring blocks underneath the hands to bring the ground up to meet me. Being careful that they're at a stable height. And then as you feel ready, begin to peek forward between the hands and start to walk forward until the hips are over the heels. The rest of the torso drapes over the body, coming into this intentional, restful shape, this intentional fold. Taking a couple breaths here to feel into where do you feel width in your body in this shape. On a breath in, we're going to start to bring the arms forward. Let the arms reaching forward begin to lift you up into a standing shape here. As you exhale, bring the arms out towards the sides, palms face towards the walls, feeling those edges of your bubble in this new orientation. We'll inhale, bring the hands out in front of us. Feel that front edge of the bubble reaching all the way towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, let them fall down towards the sides. We'll do that a few more times, feeling into those edges. Inhale and exhale. 2 more here. This last exhale, let the hands fall down towards the sides. Notice how that's landing. Grounding down into that right foot. Maybe you shift weight towards that right foot. We'll start to step the left foot slightly back, almost like a 1.5 feet between where that front foot and that back foot are. And when I say foot, I mean your foot. So the space of my foot is about 1.5 feet between. The width of your stance should be like railroad tracks, so that your feet aren't on the same line, but they're on their own parallel lines. That back foot's toes can be on a slight angle out. We're going to take our hands towards the hips, creating fists at the hips. Taking a breath in, finding that width through the shoulders, that length through the crown of the head. And as you exhale, I want you to push your right hand forward. In this stance, continue to hold that right hand forward. We'll take a couple of breaths here in our standing pyramid. One more big breath in. Big breath out, just soften through the hand. Allow both hands to come down towards the sides. We'll take a big breath in, reach the arms all the way up and overhead. Exhale, hands come towards the heart space. Feel the hands gently press into each other so that the elbows are alive here. The shoulders and elbows are getting some action. You're going to shift weight into that right foot. Maybe there's a little bend in that right foot to begin to step that left foot further back. From here, we're going to release the hands, begin to bend over that front leg, come onto the toes of the back foot, lower down the back knee, untuck the toes. This is something we did last week. Feel yourself fully collapse over that front leg. And on an inhale, find a press into the arms to find length through the crown of the head. Exhale to soften with that length. This time as you inhale, reach the arms forward, hands face forward, chest begins to lift, head begins to lift, arms are overhead. And this time, exhale, open out the arms to the side, almost like you're pressing into walls here. We're going to come into that twist again. Your legs are making contact. There's this gentle push in the feet, gentle push in the back shin to create support for these edges. And then as you exhale, we're going to start to rotate towards the right. Finding your particular edge. I don't have much twist here. You don't have to have much twist here either. And then from here, we're going to feel different edges of our bubble. We're going to start to lean back as much as feels okay in your body, as much as feels sturdy in your body. That left hand goes down, right hand goes slightly up. Exhale, feel the opposite direction. That right hand goes up, left hand goes down. You may feel some shaking, some quaking in the legs. Inhale to come back through center, level out those arms. And as you exhale, we'll come back with the chest facing forward. Arms come towards the inside step of that front foot. We can start to wiggle that right foot out towards the side. Press into the palms to release that right foot back towards the left. Coming into your resting shape here. So maybe that's a wide-legged child's pose, bringing the knees wide, reaching the arms forward or stacking the palms for the forehead to rest down. Maybe your resting pose today is just a comfortable seat, laying on the belly, or something completely your own. And take a couple breaths here just to notice how that lands. Notice how taking those shapes, how feeling those edges is impacting your nervous system in this moment. And seeing if you can come back to you. What part of your practice today is rooted in what your wants, your needs, your boundaries are. Know that you can stay here as long as you need. You could be here for the rest of the practice if that's what felt good. And if you're ready, maybe you choose to start to press the hands into the ground. To lift the chest, we'll start to walk the hands back towards the knees, bringing the knees in line with the shins so that they're not out wide. On a big breath in, we'll reach the arms forward and up to lift us off our heels. And as you exhale, we'll start to hinge at the hips. Bring the hands back down towards the mat. Knees come underneath hips. Hands take that one handprint step forward, curling the toes under, finding that push first into the hands, into the toes, and allow that to be what creates length through the spine as you lift the hips towards the ceiling. Just a breath cycle here in our downward facing dog. On that next inhale, peek up towards the top of the mat, and we'll start to tippy toe walk all the way forward. Letting the head hang heavy, letting the torso drape forward. A generous bend can come into the knees here. Couple rounds of breath. Some settling. This time we're going to experiment with some halfway lifts. We're going to inhale, bring the arms out towards the side, fingertips point down as we lift up. So finding width through the arms as we lift up halfway, length through the spine, almost like our back is in that tabletop. Hips reaching back, head reaching forward. Exhale, bring the hands together as you fold forward. Inhale, hands face out as we lift the arms, squeeze the shoulder blades, lengthen through the front of the body, lengthen from crown to tail. Exhale, the hands spiral in as we soften back down. You should feel this in the back body, in the shoulders, finding your edge. Inhale, the hands spread out as we lengthen, find our halfway lift. Exhale, hands come together as we fold. This time we're going to inhale, reach the hands forward, palms face forward, allow that to lift you all the way up, arms reach towards the ceiling. Exhale, hands towards the heart space, this gentle press between the hands, feeling the difference between your right hand and your left hand, noticing that edge of your own physical form. Noticing the heartbeat within your body. Maybe notice the temperature of the air on your maybe sweaty skin. And then as you're ready, we'll exhale, release those hands down towards the side. This time we'll ground down into that left foot, stepping the right foot back. Again, taking a peek down, noticing where those feet have landed, seeing that they're on separate train tracks here. Hands can come towards fists at the hips. We'll just take a breath here. On that next inhale, we'll keep the right hand as it is. Left hand presses forward as if you're pushing into a wall. Keeping the torso in line, so we don't want that push to take us out of our integrity or take us into a twist or pulling forward, but we want to come right to the edge of where that push is, where that energetic boundary is in our system, to know what that feels like in our nervous system, in our body. We'll take 3 breaths here. They could be audible exhales, or you could just be breathing in and out through the nose. On that next breath out, release both hands down. Maybe wiggle the fingers. What is it like to hold that shape? Inhale, reach the arms up and overhead. Hands come towards that heart space. We'll shift that weight back into that front foot. Find a slight bend in the knee to allow us to step back. Our right foot, come onto the toes here. Inhale, reach the arms up and overhead. Exhale, drape the torso over the thigh. Start to bend through that back knee, lowering it down onto the mat. Adjusting your body as you need. And allow yourself to drape over that front leg, coming into this place of almost collapse. You might bring blocks underneath the hands here if that feels good. And from that action point of the hands pressing into blocks or pressing into the ground, start to inhale, grow length through the crown of the head. From that, push into the hands. Exhale to settle and soften into that length. So we're not collapsing back, but we're just settling into that new length. Inhale, start to lift the hands up and overhead. Let that carry the torso up and over the hips. This long line of energy from crown of head to hips. Feeling that push of the feet, push of the shins into the ground to create some integrity in our grounding. And as you exhale, open the arms out to a T. Hands can be facing forward, or if it's feeling good to have that stretch through the wrists, you can have the hands pressing out into those imaginary walls. Big breath in. Breath out to twist towards the left, that twist coming from our center, not from our arms pulling us. Softening the shoulders down the back of the body, finding length and width through the front of the body. Then we'll start to explore some different angles in this edge, lowering that back hand, reaching that top hand towards the top edge, noticing if your head is slinking forward like mine was. See if you can still find length through the spine. And then we'll take it the other way, reaching the right hand forward, left hand up. Feeling those edges. Maybe you wiggle the fingers. Inhale to come back through center. Exhale to untwist. Hands come towards the inside step of that left foot. We'll start to wiggle that left foot out. From here, that active press into the hands and that back shin allow us to lift the back leg in line with the other. Bringing those toes to touch, knees wide. We'll start to sink back into our child's pose or your particular resting pose. Noticing how those shapes felt on this side. Seeing if you can reconnect with your inner sensation. If it doesn't feel safe to connect inwardly, maybe you just connect with what it feels like for you to be on the mat in this moment. Maybe you allow awareness to connect to a sound in your environment, a smell or a sight. Knowing that sometimes we need these outer cues to ground into. When you start to feel ready, we'll peek the head up off the mat. We'll start to walk the hands in towards the torso, this time allowing the hips to knock towards one side so that we can unfurl the legs out in front of us. We'll start to use our hands to support our way onto the back body, coming onto forearms, eventually allowing the shoulders to rest down, the head to rest down. Maybe you take your head and cradle it in your hands, creating this little hammock with interlaced fingers behind the skull, and just allow your neck to get a little bit longer as you rock from side to side. Only allowing the head to rest down onto the mat, the arms to release down towards the sides. And start to walk the heels back towards the hips. And from this press of the feet into the mat, start to notice what happens in the length of your body. Pressing into the feet, into the hands, into the shoulders, and the back of the head. We'll start to gently lift the hips any amount off the ground, our little bridge pose here. Thinking about the hips tucking towards the heels. The shoulders width pressing into the mat to support this shape. And on an exhale, letting that soften back down. Once the hips are back down, we'll start to windshield wiper the knees from side to side. Thinking about some length, some width happening into the hips. Noticing where you're creating space. Bringing that little windshield wiper to a pause. We'll start to bring the right knee in towards the chest. You can grab the top of the shin here. This might be where you land, just holding that knee in towards the chest. If you'd like to explore where your edges are here, maybe you start to extend long through that opposite leg, noticing what is it like to start to reach that left leg towards the bottom of the mat to feel where that edge is. And then when you're ready, we'll start to bring that right knee across the body, finding a twist here. Releasing the arms out towards the sides. Your gaze can stay out towards the ceiling, or maybe you look over that opposite shoulder. Taking those full breaths in, those softening breaths out. When you start to feel ready, we'll bring the eyes back towards the ceiling. And gently bring that right knee back through center until both hips ground down. We'll start to bring that right foot towards the mat, walking that left foot to meet it. We'll take that to the other side, starting by bringing that left knee in towards the chest. You can take a moment to really squeeze that up and in, feeling what that compression feels like in the hip socket. This is one of those things that some people don't like the sensation of, and some people really, really like the sensation of like that squishing in of the hip. Or maybe you're completely neutral. That's welcome as well. And then maybe you explore reaching that right leg long. And on an exhale, we'll release that grasp of the left leg and bring it across the body, finding our supine twist. The arms open out towards the side. Maybe the gaze looks over that opposite shoulder. Taking some breaths here. When you're ready, we'll start to bring the gaze back through center. Bring that knee back through center so both hips ground down. Bringing the feet to rest on the mat. We're going to bring the knees to touch, the feet wide, just giving some spaciousness to the back of the hips, some width to the back of the hips. Your hands may stay open, palms face up. Or maybe you decide to place the hands on the body somewhere that needs a little extra support. So that could be the hip creases, that could be hands at the heart, or one hand on the belly, one hand on the heart. It might mean petting a needy pet who has come and joined the practice. Just letting everything start to land. You may choose to stay here for our final resting shape in our practice if this feels like a nice spot, a supported spot. Or maybe this is just the starting point at which you start to riff. You start to find what expressions are authentic to your needs in this moment. That could mean extending the legs out long, letting the toes point out. It might mean grabbing a blanket or a pillow to provide additional support or comfort. It may even mean coming into a completely different shape, like seated or laying on the side. Finding that shape that you can rest into here. At this point in the practice, I want to let you know that you can choose to have as short or as long of a resting period as you need. For some, this shavasana at the end of practice can really be their edge. And if you notice a boundary coming up of like, I don't want to be here anymore, this feels not good, I encourage you to end your practice when you feel the sense that it is done. That being said, I will cue us out of our Shavasana in about 10 minutes. You can let your eyes start to soften on something safe in the space. Or maybe you let them close completely. Starting to let go of tension with the crown of the head, the eyebrows maybe soften away from the top of the head. Notice if the jaw is clenched, and maybe you start to let that soften as well. Tongue releasing from the roof of the mouth. Head getting heavy. Softening through the shoulders and the arms. Softening through the rib cage and the belly. The heaviness coming into the hips, down the legs, all the way to the feet. Allow yourself to rest here, knowing that I will wake you when it's time. Allow the first movement that comes back into your body to be that intentional breath in, that intentional breath out. Allowing that breath to reach the furthest extremities, your fingers and your toes, allowing them to come back alive with maybe a little wiggle, a little woggle. Allowing that movement to travel up into the ankles and the wrists, the elbows and the knees, the shoulders and the hips. Allowing the head and the neck to get involved here too, just inviting gentle movement back into the body from whatever shape you decided to take. Once you start to feel awake enough to begin to transition, we'll start to rock over onto one comfortable side, coming into this first shape that we ever really make in life. Taking a moment here for gratitude, to thank yourself for coming to the practice, for exploring your boundaries, where you can take up space and find with your integrity. And as you start to feel ready, we'll use our hands to start to prop ourselves up into a comfortable seat. Whatever that looks like in your body in this moment, we'll bring the hands to the heart space, making gentle contact of one hand towards the other. We'll end today's practice with a communal breath, beginning by exhaling the stale air from our lungs. Breath in through the nose. Audible sigh out together. Light and love in me sees a light and love in each and every one of you. Together we become stronger, we become brighter. Together we bow forward. Thank you so much for practicing with me today, or on a different day, whenever you end up arriving at this video. I will see you next week.